In 2014, nearly 9,000 children in Flint, Michigan drank lead-contaminated water for 18 months. Okay, so to understand how this happened, you first need to understand the same water system running beneath your own street. Water begins in a river, lake, or aquifer. It's disinfected at a treatment plant, then it travels through large transmission mains, then local water mains, and then finally a service line into your home. The system works so well that most of us never think about it. But hidden underground is a major flaw that most Americans don't know about. In the early 1800s, American cities relied on wooden water pipes. They leaked, rotted, and couldn't keep up with growing demand. In the 1820s, cast iron arrived in Philadelphia and quickly spread across the country. It was stronger, more durable, and could withstand the high pressures of growing water systems. Then, more than a century later, engineers improved the formula by adding magnesium, creating ductile iron, a stronger and tougher version of cast iron. Today, utilities increasingly install plastic pipes like PVC, but hundreds of thousands of miles of older cast iron and ductile iron pipes remain in service. What happens when millions of old iron pipes lay buried underneath the soil for decades? Water naturally contains dissolved oxygen. When that oxygen touches bare iron, the iron gives up electrons and reacts to form iron oxide, better known as rust. But rust doesn't simply wash away. Over decades, it builds up with minerals from the water, forming thick deposits called tubercles. Surprisingly, tubercles aren't always a problem. They create a barrier between the water and the metal underneath, and that could actually slow down further corrosion. So, as long as the water chemistry stays stable, that protective layer can remain intact for decades. But what if the water chemistry changes? In April 2014, the city of Flint, Michigan switched its water source from Detroit's system to the Flint River to save money. Almost immediately, residents reported their tap water turning red, yellow, and brown, a clear sign of iron rust. Unlike Detroit's water, the new supply from the Flint River wasn't properly treated with corrosion control chemicals, so the river water began chemically destabilizing the tubercles built up inside the old iron pipes. The tubercles broke loose and began contaminating the water with small particles containing lead. City and state officials responded to resident complaints by saying that the water was safe. According to state regulators, Flint's water had passed the federal lead testing standard. But we gotta look at how the city tested the water. Residents were instructed to flush their taps before collecting samples, a practice known to reduce the measured lead concentration. Investigations also found that the city's sampling methods underrepresented many of the homes most likely to have lead service lines. The result was official test results that significantly underestimated the amount of lead present in the new water supply. But many Flint residents refused to accept these results. They continued documenting the filthy yellow water and symptoms such as rashes, hair loss, and abdominal pain. A research team at Virginia Tech, led by civil and environmental engineering professor Mark Edwards, ran their own water sampling from residents. Out of the 30 samples they tested, the average lead level was 2,000 parts per billion, and the highest was more than 13,000. According to the EPA themselves, the lead level regarded as actionable is 15 parts per billion. The level regarded as safe? 0. Meaning, if the number is higher, then that's immediately a public health crisis. Around the same time, Flint pediatrician Monahana Tisha showed that the blood lead levels in local children had risen sharply after the water switch. Together, the researchers had just exposed one of the worst environmental injustices in American history. But even then, the Flint River had created irreversible damage. The water was linked to a Legionnaire's disease outbreak that killed 12 people and sickened dozens more. when the city responded by adding more chlorine to the water, that created a different set of cancer-leaked chemical byproducts. Eventually, a lead pipe replacement program got underway in 2016 and was scheduled to be completed within 3 years. But still, the city missed deadlines repeatedly and only finished the project nearly a decade later in July 2025. It's easy to think of Flint as a one-time disaster, but in reality, it exposed engineering problems that exist beneath millions of communities across America. Underneath the United States sits more than 2 million miles of drinking water pipe. As of 2023, the average pipe is already 78 years old. About 1 in 5 water mains in the US and Canada are already past their expected lifespan and haven't been replaced due to a lack of funding. Every year, the country sees roughly 240,000 water main breaks at a cost of about $2.6 billion in repairs. So, how many Americans are still drinking water through lead pipes right now? Here's where the story gets strange. In 2024, the EPA estimated 9 million lead service lines nationwide. In late 2025, it revised that number down to 4 million, less than half of its own previous count. Did we actually get rid of 5 million lead service lines in 1 year? Well, let's look at how the EPA reported the numbers. First, for any water system that didn't report data to the EPA, the agency simply assumed its pipes were lead-free. No evidence, no investigations, just an assumption. And second, more than 22 million service lines nationwide are still listed as lead status unknown, meaning that even if they do contain lead, nobody is flagging them as needing replacement. I'm not accusing the EPA of misreporting its numbers. The methods are what concern me. The EPA shortcut says this: if a utility finds no lead in its initial sample, it can classify the rest as probably not lead and move on. No further digging required. That shortcut favors utilities with the least funding and the oldest records. Those communities could be drinking lead water right now and have no way of knowing it because no one has dug up their pipes yet. The solution to this is simple, and it has already been modeled. Benton Harbor, Michigan, spent 3 years with dangerously high lead levels in their water until a replacement program was ordered in 2021. By 2023, just 2 years later, the city had replaced all of their lead pipes. Now, how did they do it so fast? Well, they skipped the guessing game. Instead of trying to guess and check which pipes to dig up, they simply assumed that every pipe contained lead, unless proven otherwise. Assuming the worst from the start is what saved them time. This method obviously requires a large budget, but the health and economic benefits of removing lead pipes are more than 14 times the cost. With that in mind, we must start treating uncertainty as a reason to check, not a reason to wait. Safe water is supposed to be guaranteed to every American, but right now it depends on your zip code and on whether anyone has actually checked the pipes under your street. But you don't have to wait for them. Under federal rules, your water utility is mandated to tell you what your own service line is made of. That notice is either already in your mailbox or it's required to be sent to you. Ask for it. And if it comes back as lead status unknown, remember Benton Harbor's lesson. Unknown isn't a verdict. It's just a question that nobody has answered yet. Remember, the Flint water crisis wasn't fixed by the city, it was fixed by a resident who tested her own water and refused to accept the official answer. There will be a next crisis, somewhere. It might be your water. It might be your decision.